Call the meeting to order at 8:30. Let's see, we have an agenda to adopt. Motion to adopt the agenda is presented. Councilor Murphy, all in favor? Carried. Delegation is AHS Hannah Hospital update. Nice to see you this morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having us.
Mr. Nail has just stepped out.
Just back in, yeah.
Back in. All right, let's hear the AHS hospital update.
Good morning. Good morning. Can you hear us now?
Yeah.
You would think that after all of this time working virtually, I would remember how to unmute myself and which buttons are which on which platforms. So I apologize there. My name is Heather Kipling. I'm the communications director for the Central Zone with Alberta Health Services. Do have a few members of the Central Zone leadership team here with us this morning, and Janice Stewart, our Chief Zone Officer, is just joining us as well. But on the line with me right now is Barb Melhorn, our Director for Rural Acute in the southeast part of the zone, which includes Hannah. And I want to thank Council for their questions and for the time this morning. Happy to answer questions, give a little update on the current situation at the hospital and our recruitment efforts, and then leave as much time as we can to answer any questions that may arise over the course of the discussion. I know everybody's time is valuable this morning, and there's other things on your agenda. So if we don't get to questions today, I will capture those and we will report back with a what we heard summary for Council's awareness and reference, and we'll capture those questions in there. And Barb, while Janice is still joining us, I'll maybe turn it over to you because this is your area, and if you want to provide a bit of an update on what we're seeing in Hannah currently. Barb, you're just on mute. You made the same mistake I did.
Oh, I feel like that's the we hear that 1,000 times a year and you still don't get any better with it, for sure. So as you might be aware, in Hannah, we do have a temporary bed closure of 7 beds. We continue to do everything we can to recruit to the site. We currently have contract nurses in place. We are working with our talent acquisition partners to advertise and recruit. We're just in a situation that I think across the zone, across Canada, across the world, where we have a shortage of RN and actually other health providers. And so certainly struggling to fill those positions. But with the 10 beds that we've had, we've managed to still serve the community. We have had really very few times that we've actually been full capacity at the 10 beds. So I think in terms of access for the community, that's good to know that we have beds available for the area. And yeah, I'm not sure. I'm new to the area. I've joined in the last year, and so I'm not sure if there are any specific questions that you might have for me.
Councilor.
Good morning, ladies.
You might have to talk.
Oh, I guess one of my concerns is, will those beds come back if the recruitment can support them?
I'm not certain. I think if we were able to fill all of our positions, we could certainly open those beds. And if we had a demand for them in the area, we can, and the staffing to support it, we would absolutely increase the usage of them. We haven't had to go over the 10 beds currently. So I think the long-term plan is if we can fully recruit, we would look at what the need is in the area.
And another one is there any discussion about sending patients from overcrowded areas to the Hannah Hospital or not?
Do you mean in terms of supporting other sites with admissions?
I think so. I think that's what it, basically if we've got beds available and other areas are crowded, can we not can our beds be utilized for other patients outside of?
Yeah,
of the-
yeah, absolutely. So we work together as a zone every day, different sites, and on any given day, we're looking to see where the capacity is. And we have actually, Hannah's been very supportive of the local geography in terms of sending patients from Drumheller or Three Hills when they have overcapacity. So we certainly view the resources as a whole and try to use them to their best advantage. And you know, of course, it's always with the willingness of the patient to go to a different site. And so, absolutely.
Thank you.
Counselor Crowe?
How come Hannah's hospital has depleted as bad as it is? Like, when I first started working there, there was 36 beds. What is it now? 7?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that.
You'll have to speak to the mic.
Okay,
Counselor Crowe.
and a little louder. I'm just saying, why is Hannah's hospital depleted as bad as it has? Like, I started there in '89. It was 36 beds. What are we now, 7?
10, 7.
The beds are at 10 beds currently. I can't speak to the changes over that length of time, other than I imagine that the landscape has shifted in terms of the community and who's staying in the community and access it. I'm sorry, I don't know the reasons behind the changes.
Well, our population hasn't decreased and our age has increased. So, but we are seeing a lot of our residents being transferred to Red Deer, Calgary, and when they want to come back or are able to come back, we don't have any space on hand to accommodate. So that's a concern. We've got 2 or 3 that in the last month and a half that have been in that situation. So that's where it's a little bit troubling for me when you're saying that we're able to accommodate with the 10 beds we currently have. When I'm relatively confident that the people I spoke with want their people back, their relatives back in Hannah.
Now, just to clarify that, are those talking about continuing care residents or long-term care folks who would be moving back, or acute care?
Oh, we had a gentleman that had forgive me for my ignorance, an ulcer, I believe it was. We took the ambulance him to Red Deer, then to Edmonton, and when he was able to come back to Hannah, there was no space for him to come back, so he had to go down to Drumheller because they had room. So the comment earlier was that we're making do with what we have is maybe in your perception good, but for mine, it's not.
We have had certainly a couple days where the site is at their full capacity of 10 beds, and that's currently what we have the ability to staff for. It might be a few days before we can get the patients back, but generally, I think that the occasions where we're not able to accommodate them back are not too frequent, but certainly there can be times, yeah.
In fairness, that people are very passionate about things like that. So of course I get the phone call and I can only react with what information I have. So
yeah, no, appreciate that.
The other one that I have is we've lost a lot of services we've had in Hannah. The laundry's gone, the meal prep is gone. The big one that I see a need for, and again, it's people, is dialysis. We have several people from the area traveling to Drumheller for dialysis. We have a patient from Castor traveling to Drumheller for dialysis, driving through our community. So I don't know all the ins and outs. I mean, if you need a hosemate, I'm the guy to talk to, but as far as what we need at the hospital, that's what you folks are for, so.
Yeah. And I just want to take a moment before we jump into that question. Our Chief Zone Officer, Janice Stewart, has joined us this morning. So thank you, Janice. I know there was it's been a morning of some technical difficulties out in our area of the woods. So glad everybody could get connected. Janice, I'm not sure if you had caught that full comment around dialysis access in the area, and maybe from your perspective, if you're able to speak a little bit to how those services are planned and their geographic kind of delivery models there.
Sure, thanks very much, and my apologies. I was having difficulty getting connected this morning. So with dialysis, they need to have a minimum of at least 6 people in an area that are on dialysis before they're able to actually look at setting up a dialysis unit. I know that the Hannah population has been going to Drumheller for quite some time. I can't remember if they actually had a dialysis unit there in the past, was there?
We did, yes.
That must have been quite a few years ago, because it's been.
Not until Drumheller took it away from us, when they regionalized.
So it's
I
been.
worked there,
years.
we had up to 16 patients 3 days a week. And Drumheller decided that they needed dialysis down there with their new hospital, so we lost ours.
Councilor Cole, you gotta remember, you have to speak to the. Yeah. So Councilor Crowell has mentioned that we had 16 people coming to Hannah, be it from Drumheller or wherever, and then when we regionalized, we lost that service and it went to Drumheller. So yeah.
I think Alberta Health Services has to look back and see a little bit of history before they can, make any kind of decisions. But I mean, we used to have, the OR was used probably 3 days a week. We used to have up to 72 babies a year. We don't even have a baby in Hannah anymore. It's very disgusting and disheartening. We had all these services. We had ultrasound, we had mammography. We have nothing here. We have nothing more than a Band-Aid station. And that's, very, very. The whole community is basically in an uproar over this, and what can we do? Alberta Health Services has everything under their control, and they just don't recognize any of us. Small rural areas.
Some of the challenges we have being in Hannah, and I've been corrected, I used to say we're in the middle of nowhere, but we're in the middle of everywhere. We're 80 kilometers to Drumheller. We're 200 kilometers to Calgary, 200 kilometers to Red Deer, 200 kilometers to Medicine Hat. So geographically, it's a challenge for us to access some of the services that are provided elsewhere. And I understand that it's just not feasible to have everything here, but it seems that we've been stripped of virtually a lot of services that were here at one time. So as I said, our population has aged, so.
I think my concern is I'd like to just get some insight on how the hiring process happens. And is it ongoing? Is there constant advertising? Because I kind of have my eyes on it a bit, and I don't see a lot, and I see things come up and then we don't fulfill those positions, and yet that advertisement has totally disappeared. It's not on the grid anymore, and yet we don't have people in those places. So how is that process taking place? Is there a loophole? Because if you don't have ongoing advertisement to, for attraction and retention, I don't even know how you're seeking out people to come to this area for some of the positions that could be available and are available now.
Yeah, I'll let Barb fill in some of the details, but all of the positions that are vacant are posted by contract. There are different terms that we have to post them for, and if there are no applicants, then we repost them, and that's an ongoing process. So we've got full-time, part-time, and casual positions available, and they're posted on our website. We're also working with our talent acquisition group, which is part of our human resources area, around profiling some of our rural communities. In the recent contracts for both nursing and AUPE, which is our LPNs and healthcare aides, there has been some recruitment dollars that have been made available from the government, and we're working specifically with those unions around trying to look at both recruitment and retention. Because one of our biggest challenges is, we tend to spend money advertising, etc., on the recruitment side, but we need to be recognizing those individuals that have stayed committed and stayed with us in those locations for an extended period of time. We're also looking at partnering with the educational institutions around rural education. We started with the University of Calgary, and we've got a Bachelor of Nursing program. It's the University of Calgary's Bachelor of Nursing program, but we've got it run out of Wainwright, and we have 8 seats every year that just started last fall. So we're doing our second intake for September of students. Because what we've recognized is that we're having difficulty getting people to apply on positions and relocating to communities. And so we figured it would be better to actually encourage people to stay in their communities and access their education remotely. And then we are supporting the clinical practicum piece at surrounding sites within those communities. So that was started as a pilot, as I said, last year. We also have some healthcare aid courses that we sponsor at a few different locations within the zone that allows us to provide education at well, I know Wainwright has one, and we've had a couple of other areas that do as well, because again, providing education closer to home and incenting people to come into the healthcare professions and staying in their communities probably means that they're with us for the long run. So those are just a couple of things that we're doing. But Barb, I don't know if you want to expand more on the recruitment piece.
Sure. Yeah. So absolutely continuous recruitment. The positions remain open until they're filled. We also work with our talent acquisition team. We have a rural pipeline. And so as applicants come in, they reach out to the applicants and discuss, where they're applying and what's the features of the community, and trying to get the right people in the right spot and where they might be interested in basically selling the communities and what they have to offer. And we do paid advertisement. It doesn't garner what you would hope often in terms of applicants. I think there's just generally a shortage right now. But we do occasionally will put out those paid advertisements as well on LinkedIn and other avenues, but it's always up on AHS's career website as well. I think you've captured most of the activities. We're working certainly as a team across our acute care portfolio to enhance and support orientation and side-by-side support for our teams for that retention piece, to keep our new nurses feeling comfortable. Rural is a challenging environment, lots of areas to learn. And so as part of that retention, wanting to ensure that we help them feel competent and comfortable in the areas that we're working. So that is a big area of focus for us right now.
Yeah, we've done exit interviews from a number of the sites within the zone. And one of the biggest areas of feedback from people that have left is the support for education. And so we're really trying to pay attention to that and look at a more comprehensive, structured orientation program for people, and then ongoing continuing education. One of the areas that we struggle with is the number of instructors. And so we're working with senior leadership to try and see if we can't get more instructors for rural, because as you can appreciate, it's considerably different than the urban centers where an instructor might have a single unit and they're not traveling, and where in rural we've got what we call a lot of windshield time between sites. And so we actually need more bodies in order to have that face-to-face time with the staff directly and to support them in their learning. So that is one area that we're really looking at focusing on. Some of the other comments that we've had in the exit interviews is around culture. And we do a pulse survey, or we partner with an external group, Gallup, to do a culture survey on a regular basis to see how our staff are feeling. And as you can appreciate, we've done one recently this spring, and the results weren't great, which we were expecting coming out of the heavy part of the pandemic. People are worn out, they're tired. There was a lot of rules and regulations around, wearing protective personal equipment, around screening for visitors, around restrictions for family, around looking at what the staff had to do with ever-changing and evolving directions that were provided by the provincial medical officer of health. And so after 2.5 years of that, staff are exhausted. They're truly exhausted. And this is not unique to Alberta Health Services. This is a phenomenon that we're seeing across the country and actually internationally, where we've got the staff are no longer willing to spend that extra discretionary effort because they're done. And so we're really trying to look at how we can improve the culture. We're working with the local managers to try and, looking at how we can be more engaging with staff, solicit their input on how things are done, trying to get them more engaged in the workplace, because a happy staff leads to quality of care for the patients. And so we're really trying to focus on that now that we're coming out of the pandemic. And that'll help.
Thank
with
you.
retention.
As just, I think way outside the box. So what if we were to sponsor a couple of nurses with their education process? Is there any way to ensure that if we sponsored them, they would come and stay in Hannah for a period of time? Is that something that anyone's looked at or doing, or?
Yeah, so we've had return for service agreements in the past. Those are usually related to signing bonuses and relocation support when we've had the ability to do those things. It's difficult in a union environment. Anything that we offer has to be negotiated. And so we have had in the past return for service agreements, and those are quite difficult to manage. There really isn't a lot of teeth in them for us. It might be different if the community were to offer something to a local individual for their education. There might be, they might be more compelled to return and stay because it's their community that's supporting them. There's less allegiance to a large organization like Alberta Health Services, particularly when there's been so many positions posted. And we found that, quite frankly, a lot during the pandemic. There were over 12,000 brand new positions that were created just to support the pandemic. And as you can appreciate, we don't put out 12,000 new grads in a single year. And so we lost a lot of our staff to jobs like contact tracing and vaccine and screening and a number of other opportunities that presented themselves. And then many of them haven't returned. And so we've really struggled with the market and what is currently available for staff. And it's basically their market. They have the right to choose what they want and where they go. And so we've really trying to be flexible around the number of hours that they work, their shift distributions, many of those things as best we can. We still need to run a business, right? Somebody still needs to work the night shift. So there's only so far we can go with some of those things, but certainly have tried that. I was wondering if it might be worthwhile for us to set up a separate meeting with RPAP and for us to meet with you as a community with the RPAP group and maybe strategize around how we can promote the community and, maybe other things. I know we've got some skills fairs that are occurring in a couple of sites where it specifically targets the high school age students to try and select health careers. So maybe that's something that we could partner with and jointly look at doing to try and get our next generation of healthcare workers excited about a career.
And some of the challenges that our nurses are having is, and we're imploding basically, is we're relying on them, we're counting on them, they're doing a phenomenal job. But they are burning out, and then we instead of moving forward, we're going backwards. And I know I've got several friends that have nurses for wives, and they're saying the same thing. It's not unique to Hannah, it's province wide. I just don't know how we got into the pickle that we've gotten into as far as being as short as nurses as we are. Because I mean, ultimately there has been a lot of new hospitals being built. In fact, there's several being closed. So I'm just not sure how we got backwards as bad as we did.
Yeah, I think one of our biggest struggles is that people no longer want to work full time. And so we've got probably close to 75–80% of our staff have chosen to work part-time. And we're seeing this with this generation of worker across the board. We have the same problem with physicians where they don't want to have the large panel sizes of patients. They don't want to work as hard. They don't want to do as many shifts. And so we're seeing this a real change in terms of people wanting that work-life balance and not working full-time. And it's a catch-22 for us because for people to relocate, they generally would like to see a full-time position until they get there and they get settled, and then they really want part-time. And so we're struggling with the fact that it's taking us a lot more people to do the same work than it did, say, 15 or 20 years ago.
And that's fair enough. Like I said, the one lady I know, she was a head nurse or whatever. She was doing scheduling one night. We were sitting at the table while she was trying to figure it out. One's a 0.6 and one's a 0.4 and one's a 0.7. And she's trying to juggle this and cover all the hours. And I'm looking at it going, holy cow, like this is craziness. But she did it. I mean, they obviously do it, right? But yeah, I've never heard of a 0.6 or a 0.7. Either you're working or you're not in my world. So.
And the workload has changed from what I understand. I had a really good conversation with some young individuals the other day, and it's not about what you're doing on the floor. It's all the paperwork and all the extra that is, consuming a lot of your employees. That is an extra workload that none of them are really prepared to do, and they're feeling inundated by it. And so it's a challenge.
Yeah, and we're going to be introducing our computerized charting system this fall. I think it's November 6th or 7th is the launch. And that's really going to be a game changer for us. I'm a little worried about some of our senior staff because they may choose that, enough is enough, and that may be the tipping point for some of them. But it really is going to be a game changer in terms of hopefully if they learn to use the tool the way it was designed, there should be fewer times patients have to be asked the same questions because the data comes over from one part of the computer system to the other. And so we're hoping that staff will embrace that and enjoy that as part of their work. It will be a significant workload to get it up and running for them, that learning curve and adjustment in how they do their practice, because they're now introducing a computer between them and the patient instead of a piece of paper. And so that's a big cultural shift in how they do their workload. But we're hoping that it'll be one of the things that actually stabilizes the workforce.
Go ahead, Sandra.
Thank you. My question has to do with the communication between the healthcare facilities, because we are, the patients in Hannah are often stuck with, again, the word hospital's full, go somewhere else. We're not specialized enough, go somewhere else. Without any ambulance care, they're driving at risk, middle of the night to get to these hospitals. And they open up their system and they go, we have no access to everything that happened to you in Hannah, so we have to start from scratch, and they're actually duplicating the work. So your first step before you put in a new system is make sure the entire province is on the same one, which they're not. So the David Thompson Health Region does not communicate in Netcare the same way the Calgary Health Region does, or whatever it's called. And it's putting patients at risk, and people are dying. And so a new system is fancy and wonderful, but have you arranged to fix the problem we already have with the lack of communication?
Yeah,
With the different.
So Caitlin, this system is supposed to correct that. It'll be the same system across the entire province. It'll be the same system in acute care, long-term care, eventually home care. So the entire province will be on a single system. And the information that has will follow the patient. They'll be able to access it from anywhere.
Thank you.
Councilwoman.
I just have a question regarding bringing services back to rural communities. Do you think that may have a positive effect on attracting nurses and other staff members if there is more services being offered, such as dialysis and mammograms and everything else? You know, I think in the rural areas, I think a lot of the workload and experience that they have is being utilized because there is not the services in those communities to be able to you know, test their knowledge and things of that nature. So they go to the larger hospitals where they've got more services, they've got more experience, they can interact with others and that sort of thing. So taking away our services has basically, in my opinion, put them in the situation where now it's having a hard time trying to find staff that want to support rural hospitals because they don't have an operating room, they don't have you know, all of the other services they have in the other areas. Is there any opportunity to bring those services back to Hannah?
Yeah, that's a really, really good question. Again, based on the exit interviews that we've done with staff, one of the why they stay and why they leave is the diversity of services. So we've got some sites where we've got emergency, inpatient, acute care, maternity services. And what they find is that if the volumes aren't high enough, they don't feel competent. And when they don't feel competent, they don't stay. They don't have the volume to be able to practice in all of those domains, because when you have maternity services at a site, you know, you look at a place like, say, Ponoka, they do about 85 deliveries a year. So you could go months and months and months without seeing a delivery on your particular shift come in. And so the ability to stay competent in that area is one of the things that drives nurses away. We've really struggled with some of the low volume delivery sites that way. So if the deliveries in Hannah were high enough, we'd certainly reconsider that and have a look at it. We're also trying to look at some of the areas, because we're seeing a market shift for some of the communities with a preference to go towards midwifery versus medical, like a physician delivery model. And so we're looking at different ways that we can partner with midwives. For example, up in Drayton Valley, they gave up doing their maternity service. It was actually the physicians that decided they weren't doing enough to maintain their competency. And so they gave that up there a number of years ago. And we're just partnering with a group of midwives out of Rocky Mountain House to see if we can bring some of those services closer to home. So we're open to those things if we can do it with quality and sustainability for sure.
Councilor Murphy?
Sorry. So at the end of the day, how do you figure out, Alberta Health Services, for example, that you have 6 people in special areas that need dialysis? Or there's enough need for, oh, I don't know, an ultrasound less than an hour's drive away would be wonderful. You can get them the size of a laptop. We just don't have it anymore because the doctor who had one left us with the ultrasound machine. So do we need to set up some kind of a database to say, hey, we've got 6 now with dialysis needs, open up that facility?
Yeah,
Do we
so
need-
yeah, dialysis is a provincial program, and so it's run sort of in the north, sort of Red Deer North, and then Olds, Drumheller South. The entire province is divided into 2, and they do monitor the referrals coming into nephrology, and they do monitor the blood work of patients that are referred and look at their it's their GFR, and I'm going to forget what that stands for, but basically it's a blood test to measure the functioning of the kidneys. And when that starts to deteriorate and they become a new referral for a nephrologist to see them, we do monitor that. And so we are looking at the referrals from the communities and monitoring how closely they are getting to dialysis. So I could go to the renal program and say, how many patients do you have currently in Hannah that are going out of community for dialysis? What do you think the projected risk is based on your known people that have been referred? Some of the biggest sort of indicators for dialysis are high blood pressure. We have a much higher rate of high blood pressure and diabetes in some communities, and those 2 chronic diseases in of themselves are a significant predictor of the need to go on dialysis. We find higher rates in particular in our Indigenous populations because of those 2 chronic illnesses present at a higher rate than the general population. So I could go to the renal program and say, can you tell me what's going on in Hannah? And do you think you're going to be close to setting up the need for a dialysis unit there?
Thank you.
One of the challenges with the dialysis, and like you said, people going to Drumheller, people from Casper and Drumheller. I know my mother, who I wish would go for dialysis, but because she has to travel, has decided that it's not worth going. So she's comfortable in her own skin. She's 57 years old or 77 years old, and she is comfortable just if what happens, happens. And it drives me batty that, you know, she has to travel that far being 77, and my stepdad, who is 90, sure can't drive her. So she's chosen to pass on dialysis, and she needs it, but because of where it's at, it's not feasible for her to do. I
Yeah,
realize you can't put one in Elk Point for my mother, but that's the problem that she has.
yeah, no, I hear you on that. I had the same discussion with my father, and he opted not to go on it when he needed it because of the lifestyle, and he didn't live that far from a dialysis unit, but having to spend 4 to 6 hours 3 times a week, and it really that kind of structure really curtails your lifestyle significantly. And so he opted not to as well.
Our community is being marketed as a retirement community. And so I guess that is a concern with Mayor Pavichuk's mention about seniors not getting the services that they need because of the location. And I guess that is a concern that I have as well. is, yeah, we hear many people that figure, well, the hassle of having to go somewhere else, they just choose not to. So by not having services, you know, it puts us in a really tough situation for our residents, and the information that you may get, you know, by seeking to see how many people are going for dialysis really isn't a true story, because there are several that are not going and will not be in those numbers. And if there is a service or a clinic set up that can service the locals, I think you'd see a lot more uptake in that, and maybe some more uptake in some of the nurses coming forward for positions by being able to do something other than, you know, just the basics that are being done in the rural communities, which is unfortunate, because we have wonderful staff and they're being underutilized. And if we don't utilize them to their potential, then we are going to be losing more and more. And I think that's unfortunate. Given where you're located, you'll get less service than a larger center, which I do not think is a good decision.
Yeah, and I also, I think it plays a role in maybe attracting and retaining the doctors that we have here too. I mean, years ago, in my previous career, we did operations, dental operations in the hospital here once a month, and we had an anesthesiologist come from elsewhere to here, and all those small surgeries were done here on site in Hannah. That no longer takes place. I talked to a doctor most recently that has left here, and he was happy to move on. Unfortunately, he loved the community, loved the people here, but his skill set was not being utilized to its full potential. So he was happy to move to another location to use, you know, what he's skilled to do, rather than just being a, you know, a general MD on a day-to-day basis. So I guess those are some concerns we all have, is what it looks like here, what's been taken away, and what we can get back.
And I guess that's a big question I have. Is there any discussions of putting some of the services back into Hannah and other rural areas?
Well, we did do a zone-wide review of services about, I think it was 4 or 5 years ago. That work needs to be refreshed to have a look at what the population demands are. We are looking at surgery right now, because that's one of the priorities for the government, is the reduction of wait times. And so we've focused on Red Deer Regional, because that's where the big surgeries are done. But we're just starting this fall to embark on our rural surgical plan, to have a look at you know, whether our operating rooms are being used effectively, and what services can be provided safely in the various communities, and whether we actually have enough services where people are traveling out of the community that we could recruit and sustain a surgeon in local communities. We do have, for example, in Drumheller, we do have a general surgeon there. We also have an obstetrician there that does gynae procedures. It has a big enough catchment area to be able to do that. But we're looking at, you know, Vermilion, for example. Our urologists travel out to Vermilion to provide urology procedural based care there. We've got some general surgeons that are traveling out to Stettler to provide surgery there. We've got orthopedic surgeons traveling to Olds to provide orthopedic surgery there. So we're looking at where else we can expand that surgical footprint and have a sustainable surgical model that would allow us not only to reduce our wait times, but to safely provide some procedures closer to home. That there's always going to be the need to travel, right? Because we're not going to be able to do, you know, the big colorectal surgeries everywhere. They'll only be offered in Red Deer because of the high risk nature of them. And you'd want to have what I call a 5-year anesthetist looking after you when you have those. They're a subspecialty in anesthesiology. They have extra training. Most of our rural sites have GP anesthetists. And so you really want to make sure that you match the acuity to the skill set of the provider so that you can maintain your quality.
Okay, I see EMS is on our list here, so having experienced a ambulance ride recently, well, 4 years ago. Pulled into the Foothills Hospital, and I'm pretty passionate about our EMS. Again, we're a long way from anywhere. But one of the things I noticed when we got to Calgary, and it was 7 o'clock in the morning, is they're doing triage in the ambulance bay, they're doing triage in the hallway. And that's one of our biggest challenges, having talked to some of the EMS people, is getting to a hospital is one thing, getting our ambulances released out of the hospitals in a timely fashion is the other. So we're kind of compounding the problem by not being able to get our ambulances back to rural or even in Calgary back out to calls. So I don't know what can be done about that. But I mean, to me, it seems to be, it's not like it's a today thing. It's not a tomorrow. It's not yesterday. It seems to be ongoing. Like I've talked to a couple of people who've been in on ambulance going there, and it's the same thing over and over and over again. So as you've indicated, we're short people, we're short manpower, and we're burning people out. And so that's something that I think we need to look at as a priority.
Yeah, so there are actually quite a few things that are happening in the EMS world. We have seen in the last 2 years about a 30% increase in call volume for EMS, which is quite distressing, because certainly our population has not grown by 30%. And so we're still trying to understand why that call volume is there. Specifically for rural, they are actually looking at adding additional EMS to the central zone for rural. They're adding, I think, another couple of units in Red Deer as well. And both Edmonton and Calgary are getting, I think it's 10 additional ambulances each to try and address some of those call volume challenges. And the urban centers are looking at their, what I call their offloading time. So when an ambulance comes in, and how quickly does the patient get transferred over to the emergency department staff if it's an emergency transfer. The interfacility transfers for testing is a little bit different, but certainly for emergency. And they're looking at some large quality initiatives to try and reduce those offloading times so they can return the ambulances back out on the street as quickly as possible. One of the concerns that we hear, particularly in the central zone, is that when a patient has to be transported into Red Deer for a diagnostic test or an appointment with a specialist, that ambulance is then held there and sent on calls in Red Deer. And so we're looking at doing a pilot with EMS around the interfacility transports to see if those can be better coordinated and we can return the ambulances to their home communities in a more expedient time frame. One of our challenges is with an area like Hanna, it's a long way to go. And so you don't want to send the ambulance back and then not have someone to take the patient back as soon as they're ready to go. So we are trying to work on those three things: increased resources, looking at our pilot to better coordinate interfacility transport so that ambulances are used more effectively, and looking at the offloading times in the emergency departments so that the ambulances are back on the road in a more expedient way.
Yeah, that's, like I said, more ambulances is awesome, but I mean, that just compiles the problem at the other end with unloading. So you had, for example, in Southern Alberta, you had 10 ambulances or 12 ambulances, and now you've got 10 or 12 more lined up at the foothills or wherever they may be going. So Originally, I was with you, I thought, yeah, we needed more ambulances, that's what we needed, and then having talked to some EMS people, and they're saying, we just need to better manage getting, as you said, offloading them. And it's not a secret, it's very frustrating. I'm pretty happy that they do prioritize quite well, because with my heart attack, I felt like the scene out of a movie. They're triaging people and I'm going right through the middle to the front of the line, and I'm like, holy cow, this is serious, so. But it is frustrating, like I said, when we tie, as you said, 2 hours from Hannah, 2 hours back, and whatever they do there, so.
Yeah, so I'm a registered nurse. That's my professional background, and my subspecialty is cardiac. And I actually helped build the cardiac program in Calgary itself. So when you went there for your medical care, the angioplasty and the cardiac surgery and all of that, I did the consolidation of those programs in the mid-90s in Calgary.
Did a bang up job. There was a fellow in my room from Toronto said, if you're gonna have a heart attack, this is where to have it in Alberta. He's had 2 in Toronto and then his 3rd one here. And so, yeah, and all the doom and gloom that we have, we're not unique. As he said, Toronto is terrible for if you have a heart attack. The level of service is very substandard, and we're all very passionate. And I guess that's the good and the bad part of it all, is we want to try and protect ourselves, and I think that's a good thing, but it's also kind of a deterrent at times. Any other questions?
Well, I just
Councillor Bloom?
have a comment that, thank you for, you ladies taking the time to come and talk to us. I guess my concern is, maintaining a hospital that is going to be around to support our aging community for a long time to come. And I think the only way that we can do that is getting more services back, so that we can look after our own in our own community. And of course, if there's extenuating circumstances, going elsewhere, we do have an airport here that, and the fly-in service and stuff that supports the hospital. So that's quite an awesome situation. And just want an update to ensure that we will not be losing our hospital, and that services would be coming back to support our community. So thank you.
Absolutely have no intention of closing the hospital there. I can assure you that. One of the areas that we're seeing a fair amount of growth in terms of demand is actually for addiction and mental health services in the Hannah area. And so we've actually had one of your local community members who works in our mental health area has just started an innovative approach to offering some drop-in appointments, so that you don't have to pre-schedule. And it's been actually so successful that we're going to take that innovation and spread it to other areas in the community across Central Zone. And so that is one of the areas that we're really trying to look at enhancing our recruitment to, is our addiction and mental health services.
Any other questions? I'll give you one closing comment. This is experience. It's easy to take stuff away. It's a lot tougher to bring it back. And that's our fear, that the things that we have lost are gone forever. And like I said, and you indicated, we're 2 hours away from any major medical centers. So as far as the hospital closing geographically, I'm relatively confident that we may be saved by that. But like I said, you need to maintain a certain level of service to a certain degree. That's one of the comments I'm getting from a lot of people that are moving here. Hannah has everything, but we'd like to try and make sure we have everything. So I thank you for your time. Any questions back from you folks?
Well, I'm just wondering if setting up something in the future to work with RPAP in the community around recruitment and retention is something that you'd be interested in, sort of a three-way partnership around, and RPAP does all professions. They originally started focusing with physician recruitment, but they also do staff recruitment and retention initiatives as well.
Is that something we
Yeah,
should?
no, definitely, and thanks for the clarification, I thought RPAP was more focused on physicians. Wasn't aware that they were, expanded out into some of these other areas, so certainly we do have contact with our local RPAP resource, and certainly that's something that if you want to assist us with, or we can see if we can work something out in that regard to talk to them about how we as a municipality, as a community, may be able to help in the recruitment process.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate the opportunity to connect with you. I haven't yet made it out to Hannah, so it's on my list of must visit locations. I've been in the Central Zone now for 3 years, 2.5 of which have been during the pandemic, so we were travel restricted. And so I'm looking forward to coming out and seeing the community there.
Hey, thank you, ladies. I do appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, take care.
Okay, can we get a motion to thank representatives from AHS for their presentation and update on activities and initiatives at the Hannah Hospital? Councilor Murphy.
Already did that.
No, you did not.
I did not.
Councilor Murphy would like to make that. vote.
I would like to make that much.
All in favor? Carried. That's quite an act to follow, you guys. Next on our agenda is special areas.
Morning, Mr. Mayor and Council. First, thank you for having us this morning, and my apologies for a couple postponements. I think this is the third one we're scheduled to be at, and had a bit of a kerfuffle with one of our 6 wind farms in the special areas down in Landfine in our last meeting. So had to beeline down there, would kept me busy for about 10 hours that day. But I think we'll start with some introductions, being that it's our first time here. I'll let Tracy do a quick introduction of herself, and then I'll introduce myself and go into some of our report here for you.
Good morning. It's nice to finally get an opportunity to meet you all. I'm happy to be here. I have recently purchased a home, and I am looking forward to developing relationships and moving forward with the town.
Bit of your background.
A little nervous right now. I have a background of being a peace officer for previous employment. I left the peace officer world in 2012. Actually became a home support worker with Alberta Health Services after an injury on the job. I had surgery, and I was really interested to coming back to my field of choice. I have a diploma in criminal justice, and I'm currently working on my degree right now, part-time. This has always been a passion of mine. I've grown up in a police environment. My parents were pillars of the community that I grew up in Spruce Grove, and I just really enjoy being a community oriented, involved person. And I bring that to my experience here. And I'm just happy to be here. And I'm a little shy.
She did a lot better with her and I just in the room.
She did great.
Welcome to Hannah.
It's good to have you.
For those that haven't met me yet, I'm Jamie Erickson. I've been with the special areas. I'm resident in Hannah here for just over 5 years now. This is my 4th post and my 20th year as a peace officer. I started out in Black Diamond, 7 long years in Provost, Alberta. My most recent post was with Neil County, based out of Three Hills for 7 years before coming here. background was military right out of high school. Served with Canadian Forces for 3.5 years, and then kind of got into the security side of things, which brought me to Alberta in 2000. Loving Hannah, here to stay. So we're excited about the opportunity to have the partnership with the town. And there's been some learning curves with paperwork and processes and things like that. But
So you'll be retiring here then?
at some point, yeah, a little bit to go before that happens. I'm also a business owner here in town, and I operate a training company for first responders for Western Canada. So my days off are spent traveling all over the province, BC, Northwest Territories, training other first responders.
So you're dealing with the fire department?
Um,
I'm sorry, this fire department?
I haven't done any training for Hannah, but I have trained various other fire departments throughout Alberta for different courses.
Okay. So do you think you'll be offering courses through?
If there's a need, then I'd definitely be open to that for sure. I do some civilian courses, one in self-defense, that kind of thing as well. So in the future, potentially looking at, some of those kind of things in town as well, right?
Like
So-
going in through the schools and stuff?
Yeah, and past with Nihil County, a big part of my job was kind of the school resource stuff, so we did, I've been a collision investigator for the last 15 years, so I did a course with the grade 12 physics students, kind of showing them the practicality of physics, because I had a hard time with that when I was in grade 12 of why I need math and physics in the
Yeah.
future, and I use it on a daily basis, right? And so the physics of a collision going in and helping them, realize that there's a practical application outside of school for those, but one of the courses that was really popular was a team safety course, which was designed in 3 hills that I put together to have rural kids. I grew up in a small community in Ontario, and then went to the military, and then a school in Toronto afterwards. Go from a town of 8,000 people to 5 million in Toronto. There's a cultural shock, right? So that course is geared around the grade 11, 12 students in that rural community that are now going to Calgary or Edmonton, big centers, and just personal safety awareness, things for what to look out for in those situations. So hopefully in the future, we can get more involved in some of those projects as well in town, but
Well, including you both.
absolutely, yeah.
It's a little easier to follow Jamie now. I do have previous municipal enforcement experience with my other positions as a peace officer in the past. I bring 7 years of peace officer experience and municipal enforcement. And I've worked throughout Alberta previously, so.
Good.
So we did provide, I think for your last meeting, a little bit of an update stats wise, and then I printed one out, not quite as detailed, but up to date as of yesterday. And this is up to date that is currently entered into our system. So there are some new complaints that have come in the last week or so that haven't been entered into the system yet. So the numbers might be a little less than represented, but since we started the contract in March 1st of this year, we're sitting at 242.5 hours of service for the town, which on an average works out to about 9.3 hours per week. We were roughly basing the contract off of around 8 hours per week, but being the busy time of the year right now with on-site leaves, with RVs, a lot more time is being spent at this point, which will, I'm sure, equal itself out come the winter months when the calls for service are a little bit lighter than the busy summer months. So far to date, we're about 40% complaints received and 60% proactive for Tracy. The work that she's put in, the bulk of the bylaw and contract work has been done by Tracy, as I cover 5 million acres by myself right now for special area 2, 3, and 4. So we had another peace officer, Terry McMahon, based out of Concert, that retired in April of 2020, and since that time, that entire area has been kind of lined for patrol, and now we add 6 of our wind farm projects to the area. It's a busy time, but so Tracy has taken on the majority of this contract work. So 42 proactive files and 28 complaint files that have been received, like I said, that have been entered into the program. With just over half of those being concluded, and 36, there's 34 ongoing, again, not including the new ones that were recently received, so.
Just a question.
Sure.
Is there any sort of kind of hiring that's going to happen to help you fulfill the position that you're in, so that you're not stretched so thin?
Yeah,
Is
so
there-
I think the goal was Tracy was hired as a community peace officer, and is waiting training.
Okay.
She has successfully completed her pair test, which was one of the big requirements for our role. And will be originally was set to go to her peace officer training here this month in Lac La Biche. However, as a former instructor for college in Edmonton, the training provided at Edmonton is a much superior quality than the one that was being offered this month. So we've made the decision to kind of postpone that, but currently I don't know what the potential is once John Armstrong retires in April. He's also he's our sergeant for the department. I'm classified as the senior peace officer for the department. But I don't know that there's plans to add a 3rd peace officer once he retires. So I think it will, for right now, the plan is the 2 of us as peace officers to include the contract work here as well.
So
So,
always get concerned when they stretch you guys to your maximum with, you know.
yeah. County, we're about 1/7 the size of special areas 2, and we had 4 officers.
Right.
So we could easily keep 6 of us busy in special areas right there, or that there's enough volume, especially the north end, that drilling activity is still pretty active right now with the special projects. We're looking at adding some solar projects in the southern part of special areas as well, so it is definitely a busy time.
Great.
But
So you can probably count on some vandalism going on with any of those, I would imagine, given the history with the copper and everything being stolen out of.
there's been some reported copper thefts already and things like that, and yeah, lots of ratepayer concerns with traffic volumes,
Yeah,
and things of that nature, right?
yeah, and unsafe driving practices on some of those
Yeah,
rural roads.
Absolutely, and just the increased volume,
Yeah.
right? Right now, it's been so hot that a lot of the cement pouring, each one of the tower bases is about 50,000 tons of cement and 7 miles of rebar for each base. So they're pouring all through the night, which is averaging to about a truck going by some residents every 7 minutes throughout the night, right? And so those that have are on the haul route are having some impact. Hopefully they figure within the next couple of weeks, it'll be cool enough during the day to pour and then alleviate some of that nighttime traffic, but
Do those other sites have safety coordinators and officers on site? Like I know TransAlta has the Bravo safety guys, so they run a pretty tight ship up there.
yeah, they have their own internal safety coordinators, health and safety manager, that kind of thing that we kind of keep in contact with. And our goal is to, as much as possible, allow them to police themselves. And then, I'll come in when some of those issues aren't being addressed, I guess, right? But yeah, so yeah, it's definitely, that side of things is very busy, which takes up bulk of my time as well as some of the admin role for me. We are currently switching to a new e-ticketing platform for us to kind of move into the future as far as my role for traffic enforcement goes. But that also includes a new report system. So I spent the last couple of weeks kind of helping build the database for us for that, which as a test model, they wanted 5 bylaws included in that, which will allow us to be directly linked to the court process and take out a whole bunch of admin time. Currently, if I write a ticket, I manually handwrite a ticket, and I have to go into the office and input that into the computer system. Going forward, that'll all just be electronically done and sent off to the court system. So we have included 2 of our ministerial orders in that test, and then 3 of your bylaws. So the traffic bylaw, the animal bylaw, and the unsightly bylaw, which seem to be our 3 biggest kind of activity bases. So we'll be moving forward with the testing phase of that, and hopefully sometime in the next few months we go on 100% into that system. So complaint wise, animal calls, about 17%. We've had just around 12 of those, again, not including any of the new ones. That can be anything from animals at large to some bites, attacks, chases, barking complaints, those kind of things of that nature. Traffic, big part of that has been the RV this time of the year, parking trailers, as well as some of the abandoned vehicles on the streets without license plates, those kind of things. So we have towed, I believe, 3 vehicles that have been abandoned for a substantial time on the streets without plates and unregistered, that kind of thing. So unsightlies has been our number 1, 60% of Tracy's work, so about 43 of those files. And then again, miscellaneous files, land use, and then the Animal Protection Act with the animal cruelty complaint that was forwarded off to SPCA for further action. But priority wise, we focus number 1 priority on written received complaints. So I think we have a good process going now where the complainants are filling out either the online written complaint or coming into the town to file that complaint. Those take priority as it's, repair complaints. Second priority for us will be council priorities, so which tend to shift focus throughout the seasons, right? We'll be wrapping up the unsightlies hopefully soon, and the RVs, and that'll probably shift into some of that sidewalk maintenance, coming into the winter months kind of thing. So those priorities as set by yourselves as council will be dealt with on a kind of even keel where everybody gets the same kind of treatment. If our priority is sidewalk maintenance, then every sidewalk is going to be applicable regardless of business or resident or whatever the case may be, right? Thirdly, the next priority would be proactive. That is part of Tracy's patrol and self-identifying whether there's trailers on the street, and we mark, make a note of it, and abandoned vehicle, keep checking, and 72 hours later, then it gets action, those kind of things. So that's kind of a breakdown of what we've done so far. Any questions for us specifically?
On the unsightly, you guys did a phenomenal job. It's been something that's been, I won't say neglected, but needed. It seems to be going along well. And again, as Tracy and I talked a little bit one day, is education. Once we get through the initial, I think that number is going to drop significantly. Because of what we have been doing, we being you, as far as enforcement and so on and so forth. So I think that's going to be, it's been good and it's going to be better.
Yeah, and I agree. When we were with Nehill, we had multiple contracts. So when I started, we actually contracted 8 hours to the town of Drumheller, 8 hours to the town of Three Hills, Acme, Linden, and Carbon were also contracted for us. And we've seen that same thing. The first 6 months to a year is very busy, lots of files, and then once people recognize what the compliance expectation is from the department, you're always going to have that 5% of return customers that we're going to deal with on a regular basis. But For the most part, a lot of those calls dropped in volume as time went on, as people got used to, you know, what's acceptable as far as, you know, yard maintenance or as far as the parking concerns and things like that. So I do foresee some of that volume kind of easing out over time. We're at the stage now with a lot of the unsightlies where we're looking at those that haven't been completed or haven't had the compliance, that we're looking at contractor maintenance side of things, which has been a little bit of challenge. Everybody's very busy with their own thing. We have a couple of big ones on the go right now as far as cleanups go. There's a few more in the queue, just waiting on contract orders to have available time to tend to those kind of things for us. So there's a few in the queue that if in a perfect world would probably be already cleaned up, but we're waiting on contractors as well for those. So but that is, and they're always one of the hot topics, the unsightlies, but they're also one of the longest process topics that take time to go through the proper channels as far as initial assessments, right to enter for an inspection, cleanup order, given that time, and then, you know, any appeal time that's there, and then the cleanup. So they're not quick fixes usually. Yeah, you know, compared to something like an abandoned vehicle, it's 72 hours, and after that, if we make phone calls, our priority is always education versus enforcement, and education and compliance. And to this date, there's been, I think, only 3 tickets issued for repeat issues. The rest of it has been through compliance. So I think it attests to the community as a whole that, you know, we're sitting in the high 90% for compliance level as far as that, without having to go to the enforcement of tickets. We are having, you know, a few of those cleanups that need to be done, but I think some of that too is whether it's vacant properties or whether it's people that just aren't capable of that cleaning themselves and rely on that process to get it cleaned, right? And we see that on a regular basis throughout my experiences, that there's people that are just willing to allow the town and the contractors to go to the process and clean up and then pay the on the tax roll rather than being able to manage that themselves, right?
Jamie, how many people would you say were kind of unaware of the bylaws and what was actually required to keep their lots up to a certain standard?
Tracy has spent a lot of time having those conversations with residents one-on-one. You know, there's always that initial resistance when we first show up, right, in uniform and right, and whether it's been a complaint based or whether it's proactive, but through the communication, I think most people are, you know, we're able to kind of articulate what the expectation levels are. But I think there has been some, let's say some challenges and some lack of awareness as to what was acceptable in the past and what is going to be acceptable moving forward, right? So, so those challenges were there, and again, I'd like to thank the ladies here. They were instrumental in helping us with paperwork and coming up with the processes, and you know, whether it's being right kind of contracted out, you know, and special areas versus the town, and you know, we're starting to receive calls at special areas and then getting everybody on board to actually call here, and then the town can forward that on to us versus calling the special areas, right? And so I think the past 5 months or so, you know, ironed out some of those learning curves, but I hope going forward that we can continue to have those conversations with people for expectations, right?
That's something you can put in my letter, Kim, as far as making people aware. And then it's unfortunate people are going to, you have a special vehicle, or going to assume, and Yeah, we can help you with that.
Yeah, and we've worked pretty closely with it for the communications. The messages are coming to me for approval and input before they're getting pushed out from your team as well. So thank you for that input. But yeah, I think that message that the town is the prime point of contact, right? And you guys can touch base with us individually is the path forward for sure. Right.
We will be doing more of that. We've done a minimal amount of that, Jamie, but we'll be working together more on that education pieces. Our feet fall under us and.
Yeah. And we've done the same kind of internally at special areas. We follow I sat on numerous committees in the province. One of those was the office traffic safety for traffic enforcement in Alberta. I was the president of the Alberta Peace Officer Association for a period of time. So I sat on that board and we come up with the priorities month to month for traffic enforcement. September is always back to school, so we're looking at school zones and those kind of things, right? So on a monthly basis, we would put out the month beforehand, hey, September is back to school, watch your speed in school zones, right? Or October straight month, and just some stats and information about seatbelt usage and things like that, or speed related, right? All those kind of things. So there's opportunities, I think, going forward to have that public service announcements kind of on a regular basis and kind of get them onto a schedule, right? For letting people know when we get into that kind of March area, start thinking ahead about the yard maintenance, because it's going to be coming up.
Trailer
right?
requirements.
Trailer requirements, and get that fresh in people's minds, right? And when we do that, we tend to see a lot more compliance because you're hitting them with that message beforehand versus talking to them after there's been a violation, right?
I guess you kind of lean towards it, but between the two of you, like, is the time manageable?
Right now it is, because, we're able to dedicate basically all of Tracy's week to the town of Hannah. Going forward, that 8 hours, we will be transitioning her into some of the peace officer duties to split some of that 5 million acres up in the future as well. So then we'll be kind of tag teaming a little bit that 8 hour contract going forward. So I'm hesitant to say we'd be able to provide that 40 hours a week throughout the summer next year as well, that we were able to do this year, but hopefully through the work that was done this year, that will transition to some of that, repair compliance and expectation going forward, which will reduce some of that impact. But for right now, I think the contract time is being managed well, and I think we'll start seeing some of that required time dropping off moving forward in the next couple of months here as things transition into the next season, right? So
Well, as you continue to ask to increase your team size, I'm happy to remind everybody how much of a budget savings it is for us to have this contract, even if it's increased in cost instead of having our own staff member. And it's already been far more efficient just through this taste of the contract. The other thing I noticed, the administrative time being 65%. Feel free to offer any advice on how we can reduce that on our side. I know that's probably the least fun.
I think things that can help would be like contractor schedule, those kind of things, right? The billing side of things, or tracking contractor time, right? Having that contractor, once they've been assigned to that place, check in with the town here and say, we spent 8 hours today here, right? Instead of that being reported to Tracy and then Tracy reporting that back to you, we could probably cut out a step there, right? Going forward with this new program, hopefully that reduces some of our admin time. Some of it is familiarity, right? I can for 20 years. I've been working with the same reporting program for the last 20 years. I can enter a violation ticket in, 3-4 minutes, where Tracy's just getting back into it. So, it might take a little bit longer, but that time will start dwindling as well with the familiarity and just the some of the automatic processes with this new one will be able to be a lot more efficient. Our vehicles will have printers in them. We're able to basically take a driver's license, swipe it, and that auto populates into the system. And then whether it's a compliance notice, those forms are all being built into this new system, and we're able to print those out right from the vehicle and leave those with residents. So that saves going back in and spending the next hour, right? For every probably 15 minutes Tracy is spending on patrol, she's spending an hour doing admin time afterwards. Right? With the paperwork side of things and mailing out notices and things like that. So hopefully with this new system, we can reduce that quite a bit as well. But some of it is familiarity, but I think there's opportunities to kind of sit down and see what's, a lot of it is data entry, and a lot of it is issuing the notices. The notices are very specific especially for an unsightly. It's not enough in the court's eyes to say
It's unsightly.
it's unsightly and you need to clean up the mess. We have to specifically say you need to remove the brown couch from the backyard, you need to remove the black barbecue and and specifically list everything that's especially if a contractor is going in. We ran into some issues in previous places where cars were taken that weren't supposed to be removed, properties and things like that. It becomes a real nightmare, right? So that side of things is very time consuming. The unsightlies are extremely time consuming for those cleanup notices, because it's not the same notice for everyone. Even though it's the same form, it has to be very specific to that property as to what needs to be done. So there's time there that I don't know could be managed by your guys' staff, but I think there's opportunities to reduce a little bit, but I would probably estimate 10 to 15% reduction that could probably be taken on by your staff. The rest of it is really the time consuming efforts of our duties. It's no different for me. I worked a long weekend and I'm going to spend Tuesday and Wednesday after the long weekend just doing data entry, which again will be reduced with this new program, because as soon as I issue the violation roadside, it just automatically is sent to the courthouse now, and I don't have to come back into the office and do a lot of that repetitive kind of entry process that we have now. So moving forward, I think our program is going to be a lot more time efficient.
It's
So-
in,
Just one of the comments I have, going through this process, this first year. So the unsightlies are the major component, and as we know, basically from May to September, that's about where we could have someone full-time, that whole section. And one of the challenges we have obviously is they have priorities with special areas, so we can't be, we're trying to work cooperatively so we're not impacting the level of service they're able to provide for their own residents. But I'm wondering, is there an opportunity to hire a summer student who might be looking at a career in enforcement that could work under you guys, and that might again take some of the easier stuff, the patrols, the documentation. I'm just wondering if that might be an opportunity to look at to next May to August to see if there's somebody out there that could fill that role. And I don't know, I know we still have to follow particular things, have to be done a particular way by a particular certified person, but whether they're working under you guys, whether they can do some of that work.
Yeah, a lot of municipalities offer that kind of
Yeah.
summer employment position for, like I said, for people that are in Lethbridge for police studies or criminal justice or something along those lines that would be able to, right, do the patrols and the reassessments and take that kind of time. The issuance of the documents or, right, that kind of stuff would be still managed by, right, one of the peace officers, but I think there's definitely opportunity to assist with that workload, especially, right, for those summer months where it is, you know, quite heavy on the work side, and the admin side, they'd be able to, right, do a bunch of that data entry and things like that, but a lot of the groundwork, right, the patrol and identifying, keeping track of the RVs that have been there, right, for an extended period of time, or once a notice has been issued, they're diary dated for checking back after 14 days, and they can do those follow-up patrols and the assessments there, right? So I think that would
Good.
be a
I think
good
that's
option.
something, I think that's something to look
And I think
forward
it's,
to.
it's a good opportunity for, right, any local, you know, kids that are looking at that career, that really helps on a resume. It's a hard field to get into nowadays. I got in without the police sciences based off my military background and my security background with executive protection and canine patrol and some of that stuff, but nowadays they're, you know, we see resumes, we're wanting to see some of that experience, which is tough for, you know, some of the people starting out to get that foot in the door. So that's it's a good opportunity if there's any, you know, local kids that are going into that field to have that first opportunity and get that foot in the door as well and get some exposure, right? So.
Might be a deterrent when they see all the paperwork they.
Yeah, it is definitely not to date myself. The TV shows that I watched growing up about policing, but
Come on.
yeah, yeah, no, we like to say it's 95% boredom and 5% kind of excitement, right? And then the paperwork that follows that 5%.
Well, and the interesting part of what you said with the administration, we had a presentation before, administration. The guys I work with in the oil patch, they don't check wells anymore. They do paperwork. And it seems to be more and more and more of everything we do. Vern being a grader operator, he has to do a pre-job assessment. He has to do a hazard assessment. He has to do an inspection on his grader. He has to do an inspection on his truck. 10, 15 years ago, you operated the grader.
Yeah.
And now you have to do all these things. And I don't know with Vern, but I know the guy spraying weeds. They have to draw out a lease and they have to mark down where they sprayed, what chemicals they sprayed where. And
What time of day? and
what time of the
weather
day, and what the
was.
wind conditions. But yeah, it seems to, our whole world has become more and more, and I'm gonna use this, administrative. We have 3 administrators here for this meeting today. So I'm not, I'm just, no, that's just the world we're in. 4, sorry, Kim. But no, seriously, that's just the world we're in, and it's so bizarre that how we have, I don't know, evolved, is that the word I want to use? But yeah, we've gone from, you know, meat and potatoes to everything else that goes with it.
Yeah, and
A lot of it goes back to our society, our litigious society.
Yeah.
And it's covering yourself.
Oh.
You know, that there's more and more now, that's where people's first thought is, well, I'm gonna go to court, I'm gonna sue you, you did this, and negligence, right? If you did something and something happened to somebody, they're gonna wanna get their money
Their
back. So you're
5 cents,
trying to, you know, on the spraying side, that's why we're documenting, the weather was 22 Celsius, the wind was this is the chemical used, this is where we sprayed, because, you know, people, you know, something happens, they're gonna be wanting to chase you down, and that more of that information you have puts you in a better light. So
Yeah, and that's a big part of, right, with the processes that we've kind of put into place following the Municipal Government Act guidelines, right, and through other municipalities that have had it tied and or tried and tested through the court system and through legal representation and everything else, right? So making sure that we're covering the paperwork in case you guys get those responses afterwards, right? And it can sometimes be a challenge when you have a, $100 dog at large ticket that somebody actually pleads not guilty to, and you end up having to pay, $700 in legal fees to actually prosecute that $100 ticket to see the justification there, but that precedence is extremely important, because it takes one of those to, for the community to go, well, they're not gonna actually follow through on it, right? And then your compliance completely drops off, right? So, yeah, so far, we've had very good compliance. Our goal, same with my goal, the administrative time, the more we can do with this new program to keep us out on patrol and out of the office. I firmly believe in being proactive versus reactive. This year for our area, I'm sitting at 25 traffic stops at over 50 over the speed limit. So speeds above 150 kilometers an hour. I've had 25 of those, and that's from being proactive, being out there. You're not going to catch those people when people call that complaining, right?
But that's scary that you caught 25.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. That I had 27 all last year, and this year I'm at 25 already, but that's, that proactive response, we're stopping potentially some of those collisions from happening before they happen, right? And that's what our goal is from the bylaw side, is the more proactive we can be, the less time we can spend in the office, then the more we get that compliance education component out there, and we can stop problems before they actually start, right?
So are any of those to do with the wind turbine
Well,
installation?
you can't say that.
Well, there's
Well, I'm
not,
sorry.
not necessarily,
But the
probably 90%
increased
of
traffic.
my traffic is transient,
Okay.
right? Travel between both 570 and Highway 9 are major thorough roads between Calgary and Saskatoon, right? So it's not, probably less than 10% of my clientele is
Local.
special area residents. The rest is transient. We have had some, some issues with driving complaints and stuff from the wind farms, right? And some violations there, but those are expected on massive projects. right?
Well, it's just you bring 400 people into rural Alberta
And
and
they're under the same crunch as they were talking about with AHS. They're trying to get seats behind the wheel, right? For whether it's the cement trucks, whether it's for the gravel trucks, right? Whatever the case might be, I think, the majority of all pilot truck drivers in Alberta are being contracted with these wind farm projects that are going on in the province, and they're having to source out pilot truck drivers from the US, and then we had issues because their vehicles aren't meeting Alberta regulations, right? And so I think every industry is feeling that worker crunch, right? And that's no different with that big project either.
Yeah, my inquiry was sort of kind of in response to complaints that I had read on from some of the rural residents living near those areas as well. And I did have just a comment that I also already mentioned to Tracy. I'm not sure that you had heard it or not, but I've noticed quite an improvement on the entrance to Palliser, along Palliser Trail. Around Tim Hortons and east, as well as north. And if you guys have had involvement with that, then I greatly appreciate it. It's been an eyesore for a long time and kind of a thorn in the side.
Yeah, I
Right,
think sometimes
exactly.
some of the commercial properties go kind of unnoticed, right?
Well, I think they go
compared to-
noticed, but maybe afraid to be addressed.
Yeah.
And that sort of thing. So thank you
Or-
for doing that they're responsible as well as any resident
Yeah.
for cleaning up their property. The weeds spread from their place to anywhere else.
Absolutely.
So just because they're a business owner doesn't mean they're exempt of that. So I greatly appreciate the work that you guys have done, and especially the proactiveness that you've taken. So I think that is huge. So thank you.
And I think, again, going forward, part of that key messaging is, individual directed, we get a lot of the stuff off of, the social media as well as there's a problem here, there's a problem there. A lot of the one-off phone calls about this place or that place, but those one-off, we really need to have that actual written formal complaint by whether it's, regardless of who the complainant is.
Education again.
Yeah, and that, what that does is that alleviates the ability for the public to think that we're arbitrarily picking on certain people, right? It's not Tracy, it's not special areas, it's not me, it's not the town that are picking on this property. We've received a complaint from, right, from a ratepayer or whoever that specifically identified that, right? So having that written complaint, and sometimes that's a challenge because, we get into the neighbor disputes and people don't want, to create that animosity between the neighbors, right? And it is unfortunate. 20 years ago when I started, we seen a lot more of just being able to go next door and knock on the door and have that conversation, right? And that has changed quite a bit over the years, unfortunately, where the town or us have to get involved, but the complaint, written complaint process is key for that paperwork that Kim was talking about as well, so that somebody, right, we have a complaint, whether it's third, fourth, fifth time that, or different people identifying the problem, it's not being viewed as harassment from us or harassment from the town and picking on that certain individual, because we have documentation to back up that there's been that many complaints from that property or that person or that animal or whatever the case may be, right? So,
I just wanted to clarify based on a comment that you made, Jamie, that unless things have changed, the complaints all come through the office and your direct numbers aren't provided to the ratepayer. So
correct.
there's no expectation that complaints or issues or concerns will go directly to you. They're directed
They're directed
through the office.
through the office and then given to us, and then we will contact that complainant.
Yeah, just so you're not inundated.
For statements or anything like that. That way it kind of.
And then even though you ask for who's submitting the complaint, that's not necessarily shared with the individual.
Yeah,
you're
no,
having to
the
talk to.
complainant information is always a privacy thing, right? And up until the point where if it has to go to court and there has to be any testifying, which really rarely happens. I have trials set every single month and I haven't been on the stand in probably 12 years outside of a couple fatality trials that I've attended to. Most of the stuff gets resolved, right? Court day and make a deal kind of thing, right? So the potential, we're very hesitant to want to say, yes, I'll testify against my neighbor for this incident. The potential for it to actually get to the point of actually having them go on in the stand is so minimal. I have multiple trials set every month and it's very rare that I actually have to take the stand, right?
So just so council knows, when a complaint is received, that doesn't mean that there is an actual issue there. That just means someone's registered a complaint.
Yeah.
They will then investigate, and in their opinion, if there is an issue, they will deal with it. If there's not an issue, they will report back to the complainant that they didn't see any issue with that. And I believe we've had one or two cases where we have neighbors that don't get along and they will complain about everything. And basically, I think Tracy's had to say, enough with your complaints. You need to deal with your neighbor. Just because you don't like your neighbor, don't go, well, they've got a piece of grass it's on the sidewalk, or they've got this here. We don't want to be bothered with petty ones. So hopefully we'll work our way through that. It's very, that's certainly the minor part of. I would suggest that a high percentage of the complaints that do come in are legitimate, and after upon investigation are legitimate and acted upon. So
yeah, we're always gonna have those frivolous kind of vexatious complaints, and that is easy to kind of rectify with those conversations as well. And part of that is, like I said, even educating the complainants as to what the acceptability is, right? If you're cutting your grass and the clippings are blowing onto the street, well, that's not an unsightly complaint, right? That's right. Where it's different than shoveling your snow and shoveling that out onto the street, which is a violation under the bylaw, right? So those will be individually assessed by us, right? But again, that is things that potentially that summer student could take some of those initial assessments duties to, which would alleviate some of that time constraint as well. So I think there's really good idea there to help facilitate through the summer months.
I would say you guys are doing a great job so far. It's been an education process for the ratepayers, and we still, it's funny, I'll get a letter, I get a phone call. I got it unsightly. What does it say? Well, it says I have to cut my grass. Okay, well then you have to cut your grass.
Yeah,
But it's not that bad. Well, it's over 6 inches tall or whatever the number is, so yes, you have to cut your grass. Oh, so I have to do it. Yes, you do. So no, it's education.
And I think there was initial some shock and awe with the door hangers, right? And they're like, I got a ticket. No, you got right.
A lot of, that's a good point. A lot of people, you may hear street or make like, well, I got a ticket. No, you didn't get.
There's been 3 tickets since March.
You got a warning that you needed to do this. You did not get a ticket.
Actually, and 3 violation tags that have been issued. They're not even, haven't got to the point of provincial tickets yet, right?
And they are statement based
Yeah,
as
so
well.
So
Written
they stopped it.
complaint with a statement provided and a willingness to attend court and testify on behalf of the statement that they have submitted.
Yeah.
So
and so we're gonna start with that violation tag, which is the town process, right? So we issue that first, which gives them the opportunity to come into the town office, make that voluntary payment. If that doesn't get done, then it gets issued on a provincial ticket and goes into the court system, but we haven't even had to go to that level yet, right? So the tickets everybody's getting are those are like, we
They're
call
the
them the
door
reminders that there's an issue there. We're asking for your compliance before we even get into the area of issuing a work order or cleanup order, right? So.
Anything else?
some of the challenges that I've faced is basically communication based, whereas people don't check their messages. They don't call back. A lot of that, so that is
That's time
administrative time
Yeah.
that I hope to reduce. By putting the time in this season, and then next year it will reduce significantly, my hopes.
I do prefer the personal versus the registered letter thing. It's,
That is more of a MGA court process that is a requirement.
anything else? On behalf of council, big thumbs up. My plan, Jamie, was to help you get more bodies when I come up with this idea. Owen and I were having a coffee one day and I said, hey, we need some bylaw enforcement in town. You guys need more help in the field. How about we work together on this? And so Owen and I stewed about it, and thought about it, and talked about it, and brought it to Kim, and yeah, it seems to work. I'm super happy with it's working so far, as long as it's working for you guys. And
Yeah, I'm glad it's working and continue to make some improvements as we move forward. I know talking with Jordan, I've talked to Jordan about this for a year or two. And I know, Jordan's position is, I would like to have more enforcement in special areas, but I have to respect the wishes of my board members who don't want more enforcement in their rural areas. So that's one of the challenges. And I know my dad was a farmer, my dad was rural, and in the rural areas, enforcement people are not necessarily well received because they're either getting in trouble because they're overweight or they're driving too fast or they're doing something wrong. And of course, farmers don't want to be slowed down. They don't want to be stopped. So I know it's been a balance, and hopefully this partnership will help and will help in the future. I know there was some concerns from special areas initially about not wanting to have the special areas being seen as doing the enforcement here. And I know we've had a few challenges. For example, some letters might have the special areas a mailing thing on there. So if somebody gets it, they go into special areas. We're trying to rectify that. The fact that you're in special areas vehicles, if somebody, one of our residents sees them, of course, they, even though they'll say we're acting on behalf of the town of Hannah, they see a special areas vehicle, sometimes their first reaction is to go to special areas. So hopefully as we build over time, we'll reduce, because certainly we don't want to impact special areas having to deal with our residents who are being told to enforce their, deal with their own issues. So hopefully we're working through some of those things. And
again, I think one thing that kind of we didn't touch on was, some of the ability with our appointment and authorization versus bylaws are strictly under the MGA, right? Once Tracy gets her appointment as well to the level of mine, then we have opened up a whole new provincial legislation kind of avenue that, we can help address with some of the traffic issues, right? The speeds, right? That study that I was actually surprised with the volume in the alley there, 5,000 vehicles in a 2-week period, and 82 kilometers an hour as a top speed, right? And knowing that the RCMP are pretty stretched then as well, right? Once things, are able to quiet down and we get out of that busy season, then hopefully we get into some of that patrol, and those other options will open up for you guys as well, right? So
yeah, I'm good.
Okay, awesome. Anything else? Okay, just get a motion from council to thank Jamie and Tracy for coming in and doing our presentation. Looking forward to seeing you again. I won't lie to you, I wasn't happy to cancel twice, honestly. What the heck did we sign up for here?
yeah, no.
Motion, Councilor Bowden, all in favor? And carried.
So I think going forward, like I said, we'll be looking at quarterly.
Yeah.
We'll coordinate that.
Thank
you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll get over my stage fright.
You're doing great job. Thank you.
That was good.
No, that's
That was
good.
really
Yeah,
good.
no,
No public presentation. Or did you want to speak that? Oh, okay, no.
Vern, this is the last time you can
This is the
be at
last
this
time you can be
table when you
public.
can be public.
Do you need a motion for adjournment?
No, just hold on. You don't want to listen to me speak? Is that what you're trying to say?
I
Councilor
never
Vern?
said that. I just thought it's all on paper.
Would you like to speak, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I
Please.
would, Mr. Mayor. Just, I normally don't go through my report. I want to go through it a little more in depth. So just so you know, we did hire Rhonda Blake. She will be starting next week. Seasonal staff, majority have completed. We've shut down the pool. We've Epic Adventures is closed. A number of our summer students are done in parks. So we do have a few kicking around, still working on our park side. Casual staff at Centennial Place, we've had quite a changeover. We had a number of high school age, just out of high school, that have been our casual staff there for the last couple of years, especially during COVID. We had some post-secondary students who were doing their schooling online and still work. So we've had quite a change over there on our casual side. So as I talked to council before, we are going to keep Fox Lake Park open longer. We're hoping we're gonna be able to get somewhere between October 1st and October 15th before we'll have to shut it down. That's primarily just based on the water. Getting the water shut off and all the lines blowing out before the weather turns on us and freezes them. So tax recovery auction. So we are down to one residential property now. We had 3 when we started. We're down to 1. I would be very surprised if that one is still not there on September 12th at 2 o'clock. I don't anticipate seeing anybody coming forward to pay their arrears and or entering into an agreement on that particular property. So we'll move forward from there. Signage project is still, the tender is supposed to close today, so I don't know anything that's facilitated through Harvest Sky. Arena, just want to touch base so everybody on council is on board. Heard some different stories out in the community, but so council is aware that we ordered a new condenser in March of 22. We knew that the time frame would be very close to when we want to put ice in, and we may be a little bit later than normal. So we have made an arrangement with the Delia Agricultural Society. They are going to, normally they don't put their ice in till first part of November. They're gonna put it in to be able to be open for October 1st is the target. And we will have our regular users use the Delia Arena for the full month of October. They wanted, and it wasn't fair to them to have them put it in for 2 weeks and then we say, oh, we got ours up and running on October 15th, and their arena sits quiet. So they wanted a guarantee of $9,000 in revenue for the month to open it, and we worked with them, and minor hockey and figure skating, especially minor hockey's are ready to go. They would enter into their full schedule October 1 as soon as the ice is ready in Delia. So that's kind of the plan there. And I don't want to put any guarantees on it. The company that's manufacturing condenser says everything's on time, should be ready by the end of September, should be shipped here first part of October. But I know just hearing things out there, I wouldn't want to put a lot of bet a lot of money on that, but we are anticipating it's still going to be there. This ties into a little bit with what I've heard a little bit is, as council's aware, we did get the Commemorate Canada grant, the $70,000. So we have been trying to work with the feds to see, because they didn't tell us we had it till mid-June, that we could extend it into next year, but they've been hanging their hat on. They get very focused on fiscal years. No, it has to be done by March 2023. So we anticipated we're going to have about 55,000 left of that grant. So we have reached an agreement with Gord Bamford, and I believe we're working with Garrett Gregory to have them hold a concert in the arena on October 21st. It will be a free concert. That's one of the stipulations of the grant, that it has to be free. So that brings in some logistical questions and challenges, is how do you get tickets out? How many? And sometimes when people get a free ticket, say, well, I didn't pay anything for it. I'm not, but that's one of the stipulations with the grant. It had to be free, so everyone had access to it. So it is planned for October 21st. Which is a Friday night. We have met with minor hockey, minor ball, and fire this week to talk about what role they could play and maybe make some funds for their organization through provision of food and beverages at the event. So we're working with them and have it open if there's any group that thinks there might be something there that they can do that would be an add-on, that we would certainly consider that as a fundraising effort. Go ahead, Councilor Wood.
So then, if I understand you right, then say Hannah Dance or Preschool were to come up and say, we'd like to get involved with that as well, that there would be some spin-off for them to get some benefit of the minor hockey and ball. And
well, basically where we're at, we went to obviously minor hockey is running the concession. Minor hockey is going to be gearing up for the concession. So we went to them as far as being able to provide food on site for the evening. We did go a little bit out of convenience to the Hannah Fire Association, because they've done bar service at a number of events, and and are very experienced in doing it, know the rules, know the ins and the outs. But we knew that they wouldn't have enough people, so we had been in discussions over the summer with Minor Ball in terms of looking for fundraising opportunities. So we've connected Minor Ball with the firefighters to give them the bodies that they'll need to provide, because they think they'll need 40 to 50 volunteers to pull that off that night. So when I say other groups, if another group approached us who had an idea of what they could do, like we've basically got the food part covered, the beverage part covered, but if there was something else that they thought could be an add-on that they could do that could raise money, we certainly would be open to that.
So if somebody were to do a 50-50, like I'm just thinking.
Yeah, well, I think,
there's other
I think
groups involved.
Minor
in it.
Ball is planning on doing a 50-50
Okay,
as part of it. But
whether the Elks or the food bank or other groups or
Yeah.
SPCA or there's other groups as well that,
yeah, we just,
would like other opportunities as well.
we worked with those because we've been working with them all along. So like minor hockey, they don't want anyone to be in the booths
Mhm.
prior to them starting. As I said, with Fire Association, I know they've a number of them. And then Minor Ball we've been in discussions over the summer in terms of they're trying to raise money. So we just said, well, maybe you can partner with fire department. So that's where that is. The senior amenity zone, so our paving, our pathways, we had a virtual meeting and we are actually having an on-site meeting tomorrow. So they're anticipated they'll start work here in the next couple of weeks on that project. They're going to stay away from Hector King Hunter till after September 10th. There's a wedding there and in the area, and so
Funny part of it is September 10th is 2 weeks away.
yeah,
Like,
yeah.
I was excited. There was somebody bringing a backhoe into town. It was broke down. It was parked on the side of the road. I'm like, oh, they're here. And I'm like,
Yeah, so Canada Coal Transition Infrastructure Grant. So I've been working with the federal government in terms of our downtown redevelopment project. So getting the paperwork in, they need getting the application in, getting the information in, and so that they can approve our request to do our downtown redevelopment project. So, question from Councilor Bowden.
Do you want me to wait till the end?
No,
or is
go
it
ahead.
okay?
Yeah.
Okay. I just had a resident approach me about, with all the talk about the work going on in Hector King Hunter Park. Is there gonna be anything done with the fountains that are sitting there not functioning or? things of
Yeah,
that
where
nature? Like,
the challenge with them right now is they have a leak in it. We don't know where the leak is. So if you run it, it's potable water, you're just washing that water away.
yeah, but that's, my understanding is the one on the west side was donated. And had a sign on it and everything, and the sign is gone and.
I don't know.
And I don't
It's-
know, but.
It's been
but that
here
was a
since
concern
I've been
that-
back 10 years, so.
And that's a concern that, if we're putting all this money into Hector King Hunter Park and there's still stuff in there that isn't being fixed and repaired. Is that kind of an oversight, or if they're not gonna be utilized, why not take them out? If they are, why not fix them?
Yeah, no, that's right. The part of it is just staff resources and timing.
And money.
Well, money's always an issue. I know the one that's close to the community center that runs through the rocks, that one is the tough one to find out where that leak is. The other one's a little bit easier. Same with Memorial Park Fountain. It's supposed to be a fountain that has water, but it hasn't worked well and.
Yeah, but you're not investing money into. it
No,
at this
but it's
point.
another municipal asset that could be working in a different fashion.
We also have to consider water distribution issues, that using potable water to make something look pretty might have been okay in 1975, but it's not okay in 2022. So we have to look our future generations in the eye and say, I know it was potable water, but it looked very nice. So we might have to reevaluate whether or not we should even have potable water flowing through rocks in the middle of the park.
And that's one of the
It's
challenges.
recyclable, is it not?
No,
Well, it's supposed to be recyclable, so that water that does come down, there is
It's
a pump that is
recirculated.
supposed to draw it back
Regenerate.
all the way and bring it,
Recirculate.
but the challenge is is the loss of potable water. And you know, you're paying $3 a cube. You know, it adds up, so.
But if it's recycled, that's.
That's the component, and
That's
we
the
would
plan.
always, and that was one of the biggest costs when we built the spray park.
I was gonna say, yeah.
If we didn't have the recyclable component in there, your water costs would balloon.
Yeah.
And again, things change in people's perceptions of water as a resource have changed and change even more significantly when we're in a drought period. So yeah, no, there's no doubt, Councilor Bowden, that there's a couple of things there that we need to address. Dog party at the pool. So
Huge success. That was awesome.
we've talked about it the last couple of years. We've seen other outdoor pools have done it. We've been a little hesitant. This year, we were approached by a couple of people who wanted to do it on the Monday after we closed, and they wanted to rent the pool and have a private one. And I said, okay, perfect. And then our pool manager twisted my arm. Hey, we should have a public one. I said, well, do we really have to? Let's try the private one and just see what bugs there are, what we learn, what we don't. But she twisted my arm, and good for her. We had the public one in the afternoon, and it was great. And I think we raised just about $600 for the SPCA. Everybody that was there, I think, had a great time, really enjoyed it. The water didn't look very good at the end of the day,
What
but
about the filtration system?
well,
with
it's
the hair
closed,
and stuff?
but it's all shut down.
You have to still clean it out prior to the end of the season.
Well,
right?
we pump the water out. We
So
pump the
everything just
tanks
went out, none
Yeah.
of the skimmers
Yeah.
had to.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well, we clean the skimmers because water would have
yeah.
gathered in there, but we'll pump all of that water out. So, and then in the spring, of course, we get, you know, you don't want to look in the Junior Olympic pool in the spring because it's not very pleasing water that's been collected over the winter. But so then we pump that out and wash that out in the spring before we start. So it went over very well. I'm sure it will become an annual event. I think we'd be crucified if we chose not to do it again next year, which is good. It's something the community enjoyed and another event we could do. Tours. So I thought we had a Heartland one we were going to be able to have this week. And then Ellison got a hold of me and said he's in COVID protocol, so he couldn't. But I want to know, is there any time next week during the week that works for council to have a tour there? Mr. Mayor, you giving me a funny look. Next week is not a good week.
No weeks are good weeks right now. Kyle's teaching, so I'm a one-man show, but I think have a guy starting next week. I'm not sure yet.
And it doesn't have to be next week. It just, Ellison had said he would be able to be back at work next week.
Like
so-
the Saturdays work best for me, evenings work fine for me, but just during the day, it's. Yeah, I've gotten 40 phone calls today already. So.
Why don't we look at the 13th? Is that an option? We have council that night. What time of day do we want to do it?
I think Ellison's plan would be to do it during a work
I think he
day.
works days.
So whether you did it in the morning or you did it in the afternoon, I think would be an option. So
Harvard's got a meeting one day, but we could do it. What time could we start? And would it be 2-hour meeting? Would it be 2-hour tour? Do you think?
I think he would say 2 to 3 hours for sure. So I think you'd want to plan for either the morning or the afternoon.
In the afternoon.
Afternoon would be preferential.
Yeah, can we do a 1 o'clock on the 13th?
I'm looking at the rest of you guys to see if that seems to work.
And then we could have our council meeting right after that, just kind of tie up one day.
I can follow up with Ellison if that seems to be a date that works. I'm getting silent, so I'm taking that as a good thing.
I'm putting in my phone, so it better be good.
Okay, I'll ask him and I'll get back to you once I hear back from him, but I'll ask him then for September 13th at 1 o'clock.
I'm probably no matter when.
Okay.
It's during.
Okay, yeah, and that's fine. Okay, that's what I'll do, and I'll confirm that once I hear back from him.
Yeah, and I guess maybe if that doesn't work, then find out what other option
Yeah.
we have.
Yeah.
If you could, please.
I would donate the limo if you
Yeah,
want, but
okay.
go out and whatever, and
Sure.
meet here whatever time.
12:30 or,
Yeah.
yeah. So the last thing I just wanna say, just as a last reminder, I hope everyone has got their taxes paid.
What? Well, I'm sure I read that we were exempt. That's the only reason I read it.
That's right, you are.
Yeah, I call water, I forgot about water.
So today is 4:30. Today is the last day to make your, probably I shouldn't say 4:30, last time in person. I think as long as it's in our account by tomorrow morning when we open, you're saved the penalty, but penalties will be applied tomorrow morning. So if you know of anyone who hasn't paid, or you're talking to anybody, remind them. I think we're pretty close to normal. I think as of Monday, we still had about $800,000 of taxes still outstanding. But I know the front has been very busy the last 2 days, and will be fairly busy today. And each night when we come in the morning, there's notice of significant amounts that have been paid online over the night. So we will have some people who don't pay for whatever reason. We'll have some people who forgot to pay, unfortunately, but that's today is the last day. So I just want to make sure everybody is aware of that.
Councilor Bowden?
I have a question. Speaking of taxes and the amount of taxes that are paid by businesses on South Municipal Road for very little services. Just wondering, there was some comment about, what are they called, those millings or whatever that are
Yeah.
stockpiled and everything, about them being applied onto onto that road to minimize the dust and all that stuff going on. Is that going to happen this year?
Well, I don't know if that's, to be honest, I don't know if that's your answer. We did put millings down in front of the water treatment plant twice. They last a month.
But it's better than what it is, and the people that are further down from the water treatment plant are concerned about dust and things of that nature. And I think if they're paying taxes, what are they paying for?
They're paying taxes the same as everybody else is paying for,
But they've had to put their own water in, they have to do their own,
but they don't
Other
have to
stuff
pay for
and-
water,
they pay for their own water.
just like anybody else.
Yeah, but regardless, if there's, just wondering, is that gonna happen? Are there?
The challenge with that road would be if you want to come up with an all-weather surface, you're gonna be having to willing to put in
$2
$2
million.
or $3 million.
But you've got that stockpile available,
But
can it not
that-
be spread further
the-
down on the road?
But what I said with the stockpile is it only lasts for, I don't even know if it'll last for a month with the volume of traffic. And it's gone, like I know
Would there be
Vern,
an
I know
appetite?
Vern being in the road business is shaking his head.
Oh, it works for a bit, then, after it's graded once. Braden and us, we know about it. But the whole thing with that road, it has to be rebuilt before you put any more money into it. Because it has water problems, it has all sorts of issues, because there is no place for the water to go. And the big problem right now is your trees have to be cut back, because we're every second or third big wind, they're all of a sudden falling onto the road,
Yeah.
causing issues. So once in a while, when we go by, we'll throw them in the ditch, but the problem is they're right on the road allowance. And we're gonna have issues this winter. Something has to be done.
So that's a,
Speed reduction would reduce the dust,
Oh, big time.
but I was
Like 50
just gonna
kilometers
say,
now, is it?
it's 50 now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but people still aren't following that anyways. I was just.
So,
bringing
yeah,
that- I was just
I
bringing that
don't
forward.
have the magic answer other than as Berta suggested, a real overhaul of the road. So
Yeah, because we've been asked by the town, we've put crown in it and Crown isn't the answer. There's no ditches. Yes, no. And
So if we're talking crown, he's crowning the road, so. the
Yeah,
water
I understand that.
No, I just.
Yeah.
in case someone didn't.
So I think Councillor Murphy had a question or comment.
I know you delicately skipped over GFL and I just.
Oh, okay. No, I just,
My question, Mr. Neal, has to do with, I thought it was a little funny because I drove by the other day and I literally had to hold my breath before I passed them. The mound was bigger than this building. To me, it looks like a sulfur based, but apparently it's not, and there were two giant mounds. So I just thought it's fine saying, well, wait till we're done all the work. We need to see it now because I'm telling you, you can't breathe on that property.
So did you, may I ask a question? Did you phone Alberta Environment then?
No, I did not.
I think that is kind of the rule to follow, is that if you've got a concern about the smell and everything, is to phone the Alberta Environment, file a complaint, and then that gets addressed.
Yeah,
addressed
I'm
by
aware,
the issue.
I'm fully aware of that, and it's making absolutely no difference whatsoever, so I just wondered what we're gonna do next.
Well,
Because
it
that's
sounds like
ridiculous.
there's nobody filing the complaint.
I find that very suspicious, because I know people have called and they're saying no one's called us. So now we have to start documenting, it's not working, so we have to come up with something.
so I don't,
We're being laughed at.
I don't know, and this is my conversation with Alberta Environment is up until a month ago, they had very few calls, if any. They have to, and they tell me they have to document each and every call and each and every complaint to that number. So I know Councillor Olson has had a discussion with them via that process. I think he got a similar message.
Yeah, and then the ones that I've talked to, just like we did just now, people that have raised issues have never called. I think social media is easy, they like to click like and click share. And I've motivated several of them, and they have got more in the last few weeks. The inspector said, yeah, I'm probably due for a visit. He likes winter visits because it's obvious when the snow is yellow. Aside from that, pH testing and various things to identify it, but again, everybody's complaining it is loud on social media, and it is shameful, but everybody I've talked face to face, just like now, said, oh, no, I haven't called. So they have much more ability to deal with it than we do.
I'm
That's
not
what I'm
sure.
trying to motivate.
I'm not even sure what, I'd call and say, well, I drove by and there's a giant mound.
The smell.
They ask questions, it's a
Smell.
3-minute process, you get a person every single time, and then they say, okay, what was the day, what was your experience? And they do quiz you on and try to get information, and if you want to call back from the inspector, you do truly get it. So it's a good conversation with them every time.
I'm feeling
They're
hopeless that I was almost gonna bring it up with bylaw and say, you know what? Alberta Environment's not working. It's been a year. It's the same conversation, so perhaps we need to start getting bylaw enforcement to start putting little tags on their fence
But for what, Councillor
for
Murphy?
blowing stinky, when you're driving by and it's shit, that's all you smell. It wasn't me. I'm alone in the vehicle.
Yeah, but if you don't follow the, if
Okay,
you don't. follow
I'm
the
talking
rules,
about that
Sounds like
process. They told us we don't need to worry about it because it's all taken care of. It's not happening. I need them to tell us, because harassing and I'll do it. That's fine, but it's not gonna make any difference. I can assure you, they'd come back next month and say, no one's called us.
Well, but you would have documented that
Me,
you
have
called.
you called?
No, I haven't, because I haven't had
There
the
you go.
experience.
All right.
So. Or if I have.
I just
experience.
wanna, there's people that work there, they're not wearing respirators, there's people that are camped across the berm that are not complaining about it. It's like, I have a neighbor in Stevens Crest that doesn't cut his grass. I mean, if you have a contentious issue, people are going to jump on the bandwagon. I'm not saying that it's not a problem, but the people at work, no, it's not, for everyone it is not.
Okay.
So basically, like I said, the people that are camping there, the funny part was complained about the ants. There was no mention of GFL, complained about the ants problem, not GFL. Hannah Motor Products, myself, the school division, all have our shops within the wind path. No complaints. So I'm not saying it's not an issue, but same thing, I've talked to numerous people on the Facebook thing. Causing medical distress, okay, fine. Bring me something that we can use, but Facebook doesn't cut it. If you're having a medical emergency because of GFL, you have a leg to stand on.
And they've got documentation to support it.
Exactly, but
And so
to
that's what
simply
we
put it on
need.
Facebook or a verbal conversation doesn't do anything for anybody.
The challenge we have right now, and I think Councillor Olson's alluded to it a bit. The challenge we have right now is if you read on the internet and you read different things, the pollen levels in Western Canada are at record highs. So, you know, I can't, when somebody says their allergies are worse now than they've ever been, I don't, as the mayor said, I don't have any documentation that that's because our pollen count is a lot higher than normal, or there is some sulfur that is irritating people. That's what we have to try and identify. I know even on social media, there's a picture of yellow stuff by a drain. If you go on the internet and Google pollen after a rainfall on a street, you'll see pictures very similar to that picture. So I can't sit here and say there wasn't any sulfur in there, that it's 100% pollen, but I can't say the reverse. But you know, if sulfur is leaving that site, then there is something that can be done about it, but it has to be proven that it's leaving that site. The dust part, again, I'm wearing my rose-colored glasses in terms of, I think GFL has, they probably let us down a bit of the wrong path at the start, but we're down that path. We're into it now. They have been receptive and trying to make improvements. They haven't ever once told us we're not making any improvements. We're not trying to improve this. The fact that they built a wind fence, the fact that they built another structure, the fact that they put some more privacy slats up, in my mind indicates that they are trying to do some work to try and mitigate. It hasn't, I 100% agree. If I live in that immediate vicinity, I'm not a happy camper. And but they have been trying to mitigate it. Can they do some more? Hopefully they can do some more, and we can continue to work with them to make some improvements there. I'm not saying that I'm 100% happy and satisfied, because I do know that there is an odor that will come off of that site. Me as a resident living in the middle of town doesn't impact me at all. I've had residents who live on the east end of town, probably as close as where the residences are, other than the Dows across the highway, said they don't really ever notice anything. It's one of those things, and I think partly, and I can't speak for everybody, but I think when they brought in their bad material at the very beginning of the process last year, that was a terrible smell. That burned your nose. This is an odor. It can be unpleasant, but it's a different odor. And I guess it's the expectations of what people have. It's the expectations of Alberta environment. When I talked to the gentleman who was here and met with council this spring, when he went on site after the meeting, I said, well, what did you think of the smell? Well, I didn't really notice anything. It's kind of in his words, whether it's right or wrong, kind of an earthy smell. That's what he described it as. There wasn't anything that was really noticeable to him or in his mind. Again, he maybe has a different standard of odor than what other people have, but that was his response. I'm hoping through some of these calls, I've been in conversation with James about getting out on site. I've also had a discussion with him, and whether they've been talking internally, whether one of the next steps would be to have GFL be putting an additional larger structure up again to almost put everything inside a building. Again, that's a cost. Cost of doing business, and whether that's something that we can work with GFL to do, as it was one of the next steps to improve and mitigate their nuisance from the site. But until we know, as the mayor said, until we have proof that this is happening, you know, it's our word and it's our residents' word against their word, and we need to be able to find some definitive proof. I don't know.
A tour, Mr. Neal, would have made today, if we did a tour today, which I was looking forward to,
Okay.
we would have seen the giant mound of yellow that is not a ghost. It's there.
No.
I'd like everybody to take a deep breath just on the edge of it. And if we're all happy, we go home and we defend our decision to the town residents. But not going there, there are people who have clearly not left Hannah in a long time, because you have to hold your breath if you turn the corner and go to that. But that's just me. Apparently, I'm the only human being who smells it in this room right now. But if we had a tour, they're saying, we'll do it later. They want the mound gone. I would like to go while there's a mound, so all of us could potentially be at risk, but at least we're showing the residents that we care. That would have been nice.
The only, and I'm not absolving GFL, but when they look at it from their perspective of an active work site, when you bring visitors on, you have to be, you know, they're trying to preclude that there will be any.
There's OHS regulations.
Any incidences there, and
We could be on the outside of the fence. We could have gone today.
that's not
on the
really
outside
a
of the-
tour.
Oh, I can assure you, Mr. Neal, it would have made enough of a difference that it would have impacted some of the people in this room. If they could have seen how horrific the smell is. And then we're all gonna go for lunch across the street and see if anybody still has an appetite. And if you all do, I'm totally okay with it. I just feel like I'm trying to make sure that town council is paying attention. I didn't say Facebook once. You brought it up. I never mentioned Facebook. I'm talking about personal experience. And it's not about all of us harassing Alberta environment. We're not collective right now. Half of us think, well, whatever, just don't go that way. It might smell a little. I don't stay in a campground near there. I'm talking about driving by. There are people who would not stop. Because I never stop in Sudbury. I never stop in Brooks. They smell horrific. I would never use those businesses. So if it's impacting people stopping here, we should reevaluate it. And if it's nothing, we're good. I
can't speak for the rest of the people in this room. All I can say is, I know from my perspective, I drive out to the site probably 3 times a week.
But you can't smell anything.
No, I will tell anybody, I think you're crazy if you say you can't smell anything. It's just would be your comfort level. I don't know if that's the right word in terms of whether you think tolerance of what that odor means to you. And again, this is just me personally, and I'm not absolving anyone. I could drive there and I could park outside their gates at GFL, and I will admit to anyone, anywhere, anytime that I will smell an odor. Do I think it's terribly offensive? Not particularly. If I had to live by it 24/7, I might certainly be much more frustrated.
You might not eat your lunch in the parking lot.
But I don't have any, and again, this is just me, Councilor Murphy. I could go and I could park there and I could sit there for half an hour and I could go across the street and eat, and it would not bother me. But that is me and my tolerance. And I will say, not everybody will have the same tolerance level as I do. So I'm certainly aware of it, Councilor Murphy. Like I said, I go there 3 times a week. I go there because I know that it's an issue. And I go, okay, it's not, depending again, which way the wind's blowing. But I also take some solace, and I've told this to the mayor, when I drive down Palliser Trail and I look and I see PLRD has their shop doors open, Animal Motor Products has their shop doors open, Big Al's does, Pine Ridge does. To me, I go, okay, it's not terrible. It's not terrible today because these businesses are in close proximity and they could have their doors closed if it was bothered. Again, that's just me and only me, Councilor Murphy.
Like, I've traveled from here to Edmonton to Cochrane to Medicine Hat. If you were down any part of the highways yesterday, anywheres, and the farmers are in the field with their combines, there's a hell of a lot more of a smell and a heck of a lot more dust being raised than I've ever seen out of GFL.
And I do agree with you.
I mean,
I do agree with you, Councilor Murphy, that we probably aren't all on the same page here, and that
Clearly.
happens.
Yeah.
But that happens.
There we go. And that's fine. That's fine. We just,
Well, I haven't gone by it in a long time. And I had in the past gone by, but I have Alberta Environment number.
so.
And so that's my intent
Right,
to.
and I would prefer if we could manage GFL as a council instead of constantly going to Alberta Environment, which is not working. So we need to look them in the eye and say, dude, what are you doing? This is not, I didn't make these decisions, but I have to live with them. And I'm disgusted with the fact that every time they come here, the only time they came, it was lies. What they said was not the truth. We have no sulfur whatsoever. Well, come on,
I don't-
it's on record.
I don't recall them ever saying
They
that.
never said there was no sulfur, so.
That's elemental sulfur is what,
Yeah,
elemental
watch the
sulfur
video.
is
The
what
guy-
they mix.
The
so
guy
we don't
stood
know
here and
that.
talked about sulfur for 20 minutes.
Yeah.
No, there's no doubt there is sulfur on site. That's part of their process.
Obvious.
100%.
It's not indoor, it's outdoor.
The sulfur is indoor. It is outdoor when it's blended. When it's in its elemental form, it's in the building, but as part of the blending process, it is certainly then mixed with the compost and it is outside at that point.
So if that's what we all agreed to from the get-go, I'm a little disappointed. If that's what's there right now is what we as a council agreed to is it's just a very poor decision. That was
Well, we
made.
never agreed that the Dowers would be in that situation.
If the
After-
way it is today, based on the fact that there clearly is not much we can do about it, and that this is okay, smells okay, dust is okay.
So
And I don't
what-
know about the dust issue, but at the end of the day, if that's what you all agreed to, I would not have agreed to that, and I have to live with it, but.
So
it's
what do
gonna
you
be-
suggest that we do?
I'm not gonna
other than-
argue.
I'm not arguing
Okay.
with you, I'm just asking if you have another avenue that we should be taking other than going through Alberta Environment. What do you
I'm-
suggest that we do?
I have no idea. I am not an expert on any of this, but neither is anybody in this room, but you all made this based on no expertise, and here we are.
We made,
Based on expertise
made
that are
we
provided.
made our expertise, we made our decision. And again, certainly we had council members who were here when the decision was made. We made our decision based on what we were told, and we made our decision based on the approvals of Alberta Environment and using Alberta Environment rightly or wrongly as the experts in terms of the handling of the material, and that if they were willing to approve the operation of that site, that was the expertise that I leaned on and probably council leaned on.
Perhaps in the future, I would recommend that you possibly get a private consultant or somebody who's capable and competent to make these decisions, because we're now stuck with a
So-
pile of shit at the road.
Don't want to interrupt with the approval, the only literal black and white thing that we saw that still exists was that approval. And in there, I've read it far too many times if I want to,
You can
but
quote
it says,
sections,
no offensive odor will leave, no disruptive dust.
Mhm.
And that's all point of view. That's a struggle that I have with it, the
Right.
interpretation.
Interpretation.
The only thing is no sulfur will leave the site. So that's the avenue I'm trying to get down, and the only one that can retract that approval or to punish them due to that approval is Alberta Environment. So when he was down here, he looked at it, okay, they need to do better. So they put the sulfur in the building. He says maybe the next step, if it continues to be a problem, is put the whole blending action in a building and perhaps the whole finished product in a building.
The
That's
finished
the
product
only,
is not odorless. I guess that was the other issue,
Agreed.
because he was very clear that it was an odorless,
Yeah.
totally safe, and it's a giant mound of yellow. It's not, it glows in the dark. The pile of blended apparently is bright yellow, and that's, to me, the only thing that's yellow like that is sulfur. So I don't know
Well,
what.
there
it
is
is.
sulfur on site.
Sulfur.
There is lots of sulfur on site, truckloads of sulfur on site.
And that's the whole blending. That's what they blend the.
And as
compost
far as it
with is
glowing in the
elemental
dark, I went
sulfur.
past at 10:30 last night and there was no glow coming
I
off of
was,
PSL.
okay.
So
We're good.
just to go back, certainly we want to have that tour. And when I said tour, Councilor Murphy, it was an actual tour of the facility and a description of how they operate, when they operate, how they do this, how it's all the whole process. Certainly, we can all gather there at any time outside the gate, and if you want to do that as a group, we're able to do that as a group anytime. This was an actual tour of the process, how they do things, why they do things, and in what manner, so that we have a better understanding of their site and how they do the work. And also it provides another opportunity to answer questions, ask questions in terms of, could you do this differently? How about if you did this? And that's what the intent of my tour that we were trying to get for council was.
Thank you.
I think we did round table. Councilor Warwick.
On a more positive note, I just want to give some accolades to the decision council made with the millings on the golf course, because I've been spending time on the golf course over the last little while, and the responses have been very positive about the pathways and the millings that are working very good. So it's kind of excited to hear that.
carts don't push it out the same as large.
Trucks, great.
Yeah, so.
And the dust on South Municipal, a big part of it is guys hauling water to the windmills.
Right, yeah.
It's huge amounts. From a water commission, like, this is the best year they've had tenfold. It's just insane, like, we're talking 4,000 cubic meters a day of water leaving there. So it's 24 hours a day. I check my camera every once in a while just for shits and giggles and put it on 16 speed, and I'll bet you there isn't 20 minutes in the day that a truck doesn't drive by hauling water. So. Okay,
I
any
know
other?
there may be something for roundtable though.
Yeah, that's why I was gonna ask, is there anything for roundtable, anyone, and anything that anyone would like to build up that we haven't talked to?
The car show was an awesome blast,
Yes.
and it was extremely well received, the best they've ever done. We had 80 vehicles that came in from all over the place. And a few things to fix for next year, but as a council member, I volunteered for the day, so I could see how people were reacting to it, and I was burnt and hot, but it was wonderful. Kudos to the members who did that.
Yeah, and I think the impetus behind it is, it's as simple as that. One passionate gentleman who
Fabulous.
wanted to make this happen and put in
He
the
did.
legwork to make it happen, and it was a success.
It was great.
I'd be remiss not to mention the passion on the other side of pilots that went, and again, not experts, but was disappointed in gouges in the material on the airstrip. That his concern is it will impact decisions of air ambulances.
Oh, that was, yeah, two different events.
Two different events. That was the race.
Oh, you're talking just the car show.
The cart,
Gotcha.
this was a completely separate event. It was celebrating beautiful vehicles and people. But you're right, that has been an issue in the past, and I know the airport has been damaged from racing in the past, so it's happened again.
Yeah, and it's a tolerance perspective.
Who was the forerunner of the car show then? Who set that all up?
The car show was
Neil
Neil
Hanford.
Hanford and his wife, Gail. I believe.
And they're local. They're local.
They're relatively new to town. It was actually funny. He stopped the shop one day and just blew this idea up.
Yeah.
Can we do this? And I said, well, I don't, and my concern is not to have a separate event again, because we have a lot of little events in town. So he's asked me, he said, what do you think? I said, well, pair it up with something that's already going on, be it the rodeo, be it fall fair, be it something else we have going on, and make it a bigger day than it is. And so he decided to go with fall fair. And yeah, it worked out really well. He was fun to deal with. He was very task orientated. There we go. As far as the way everything he perceived it to roll out, and how it actually rolled out and stuff. But so yeah, no, he did a great job of it. And yeah.
Random question for those events, has anybody ever done a liquor license for those 1 or 2 block closures? I've heard people talk about it. I don't know if anybody's successful.
We didn't, but instead what we did is Sammy's was open and he has a license, I believe.
Yeah.
The Legion was open and they have a license, so the Legion was open so people could go in and have a beer. We did have that. And the library opened on the Saturday morning. And the kids, the A&W Root Beer was there, so the kids showed up and they had events, so it was good. But yes, we did have liquor available.
But I just pictured, you know what?
A beer tent.
Block
The
party.
2 blocks.
Yeah, a
Block
beer
party,
tent
yeah.
would have been great. I would
But
bring
then
that
it
up to
takes a
you.
week to look at this.
I'm not aware, Councilor Olson, of that being even a demand, a requirement of them. Certainly, it would be feasible for them to do. They'd have to obviously get their license. And I think that they get their liquor license and get their insurance and all that stuff. A lot of people go, okay, we're only here for 3 or 4 hours. All that work, is it worth it?
Yeah.
So might be a neat add-on, but I don't
I
know.
can't imagine people avoided it because they couldn't walk around with a beer.
No.
Yeah. I suspect.
The beer and cars parking, you know, they're not to go together.
Frontier of Cheyenne, they basically shut down 10 square city blocks and you just walk the bar with their glass. It's, yeah, we're a long ways from there.
Yeah.
Okay, anything else? Hearing nothing. I would like to adjourn the meeting at 11:13.
Why is it